2 balls and a strike to count on Taylor. Reyes fires, swing and a drive, deep left field. This is way back. Walk the ball.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into DodgerHeads, presented by DodgerBlue.com, part of the Blue Wire Podcast Network. My name is Jeff Spiegel, joined tonight by Matthew Moreno, here to talk about the 2024 World Series champion Los Angeles Dodgers. Matt, I'm never going to get sick of saying that on the intro, the outro, any of it.
I know. I wonder if maybe we need to and occasionally throw in the Clayton Kershaw 2-time champion.
True.
Although I guess for the it doesn't fully apply to the Dodgers, but for at least you and I, in terms of our tenure covering the team, it's 2 championships now, and there's nothing you can't take that 2021 away.
Yeah,
but yeah, it's 2-time.
Yeah, 40% of the years that we have had this show, the Dodgers have won the World Series, it's about as good as you could possibly get when it comes to odds. So lots to talk about with the Dodgers tonight. We are going to talk, of course, about Roki Sasaki, which is the biggest story in Major League Baseball right now. We will talk free agency. Dave Roberts has revealed, I suppose he was trying to be coy about it, but revealed his wish list of players that he would like, some of which are pretty specific. But let's start with some news that came out just today. Not terribly surprising news, Matt, but first base coach Clayton McCullough is set to be the Marlins' next manager, according to reports. It has not been confirmed yet, but this has sort of been in the works for the last couple of weeks, it feels like. And for a guy in McCullough who has been connected to the Mets, Brewers, Guardians, Royals, White Sox, and now Marlins, I suppose it's kind of a good for him finally getting his shot.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, a little bit of a long time coming. You mentioned those list of teams we were discussing before we started this show. McCullough has interviewed with at least 1 or 2 other teams for their manager position, like the last 3 years, I want to say. Definitely the last 2 years, potentially even the last 3 years. A long time coming, a little bit for him, and it's good to see he finally gets his opportunity. Obviously, I think there are some unfortunate challenges that arise with it being the Marlins organization, but hopefully he can do well and start his managerial career on that side. I know he was a manager, I believe, with the Blue Jays farm system before joining the Dodgers. And I see some of the comments, and I did see some stuff on Twitter today. Yes, like on one hand, it is quote unquote just a first base manager, but he also helped with their outfield positioning. And I remember, seeing him work with Pages before games in left field, and center field, and James Outman, the same thing last year, getting him acclimated. Mookie Betts has also called him, I think, one of the best coaches he's ever had. Like, they were very close. So it will be, a loss, I think, for the Dodgers. But like you said, credit to Clayton McCullough. We certainly wish him well.
I was just going to ask you whether you had any sense of who might take his spot in first base. And the name that popped into my head as you said that was Chris Woodward, who was a base coach, who then got hired away to be the manager of the Rangers. That didn't work out, and he returned almost a year ago to the day as a special assistant in the front office, as well as a roving infield instructor. Now, he was a third base coach, but do you think there's any chance Woodward could be the guy set to replace McCullough at first?
Yeah, I think perhaps that's a good guess, a good possibility. It would make sense. I guess for Woodward, it would come down to, I don't know if the special assistant role he has right now is a little bit more family friendly and not, needing to travel all the time with every game that the Dodgers are playing. Wouldn't fully surprise me if that's where they go. I think also the reality is, look, the Dodgers, like, on top of being World Series, on top of being the Dodgers, they are the reigning World Series champions. Dave Roberts, there's not going to be any question about stability with him moving forward. I know he just has 1 more year on his contract, but that is merely semantics at this point. They will work out an extension. And so my thinking is also, if there is a first base coach out there that the Dodgers want to hire, they probably could just pick up the phone and say, hey, we have this opening. Would you be interested? Yes or no? And, they could probably pick from a very select group.
Yeah, I'm with you. And I mean, the other thing that I was going to mention just about him leaving is keep in mind that, there's a non-zero chance that some guys from the Dodgers organization end up going with him. This is the type of move where maybe it's an assistant pitching coach that wants to become a pitching coach, or an assistant hitting coach that wants to become a hitting coach. Those types of people I could see possibly making the move with McCullough. And so we don't have any reports that I know of, at least yet, as far as again, it's not even official yet, but who might go with him. But it does feel like sometimes when these moves happen, it's not just one coach that ends up moving. It's a couple.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I mean, maybe it's even somebody like the bullpen coach, like Josh Bard, stuff like that. I think the Dodgers kind of upper level of Dave Roberts' staff, the Danny Lehman, the Bob Guerins, I think they're safe. Robert Van Scoyoc and Aaron Bates do share the hitting coach title. I don't necessarily see Van Scoyoc going, but maybe Bates wants a chance to be kind of the sole hitting coach. And like you said, like there isn't anything suggesting this, so we're just kind of speculating and throwing out possibilities here. Jeff, I see Mr. Classic is saying he's nominating you for first base coach. So maybe you need to get on a little league field quickly as you can and get some footage of you sending somebody stealing second base or something.
Yeah, don't send this video to anybody who actually does this. But I mean, come on, how hard could it be to be the first base coach? I could collect some sliding gear. I could hold the stopwatch and pretend like I'm timing the first base or the pitcher's move to first base. Let's be honest here, right, Matt? I mean, how hard could that possibly be?
Yeah, I mean, maybe the most difficult part is going to be learning and keeping track of all the celebrations you would have to do. Yeah, Ohtani has his, Freddie Freeman has his. I think Mookie might have one with McCullough. There's a lot of different celebrations there that you would have to pick up on top of showing, that you can handle a stopwatch and watch a pitcher's pickoff throw.
Yeah, and make sure that I learn how to say "don't steal" in multiple languages to players at first base, because that's going to be new there as well. Jason says he'd like to promote Chris Taylor to first base coach. Yeah, maybe Justin Turner if this ends up being the end. I mean, I imagine he would come in as like a bench coach. He's not messing around as a first or third base coach, I don't think. But
yeah, you never know. But I saw that. I don't know if he's ready to retire just yet. Anyway, I think that's more people wishful thinking by the people trying to retire him a little early, not early, but earlier than he wants.
And wishful thinking in the sense of him coming back to the Dodgers, whereas in his mind, wishful thinking is let's cash a few more checks that have 8 digits in them before we call this a career. So again, stay tuned. I'm sure this will become official. It is the Marlins. Like that was the one other thought real quick on guys leaving. I don't know how many people are going to want to follow Clayton McCullough to the Marlins, knowing that what does job security really look like in a place like that, a place that seems pretty dysfunctional and allergic to success. But who knows? Who knows what happens? Good for Clayton McCullough. I can imagine you always want to be the guy in the chair, and now he gets to be the guy in that chair. And look, guys have gone to way worse places than Miami, and one with way less talent than they are going to have down there in the next couple of years. And so hopefully he can sort of build himself a little bit of a career and get himself a little bit of a reputation there. Because that's the other thing, like Woodward, we mentioned, there hasn't been a ton of success in guys leaving the Dodgers necessarily and going on to win baseball games. So hopefully Clayton McCullough can do it, as long as it's not at the expense of the Los Angeles Dodgers. Let's shift from this topic to one that I know Matt is going to be get people excited, get people fired up, positively or negative. Let's talk the latest on Roki Sasaki and the Los Angeles Dodgers. If you have not paid close attention, Roki Sasaki is one of the best pitching prospects in the world. If this guy were in the major league draft, he would be a top 5 pick. If he came over and was prospect eligible, which some lists would consider him to be, he would probably be one of the top 5 prospects, if not the number 1 prospect in all of Major League Baseball. He has decided to come over and be posted. We'll get into why I say he has decided that in just a second, but he's decided to come over before he turns 25, which means he will come over through international free agency, amateur free agency, which means basically he's going to sign a rookie level contract and get paid minimum for 4 years, then do a few years of arbitration. It also means that the signing bonus he gets is entirely dependent on the international free agency pool. That is capped at, even in a best case scenario, like $7.5, $8 million at the most. So there's a lot of layers to this, but if you've been following this story, it sure seems like he has a clause in his contract that is unique in Japanese baseball that he probably negotiated when he decided to even sign out of high school with an NPB team to begin with, that he would have the option to request posting and then have that request granted. All we know at this point, Matt, is that he will be posted. We do not know a date yet, and there's more to get into on this front. I know this has been the biggest storyline. I'm curious from your perspective, what has stood out to you most about even just the narrative surrounding the announcement that at some point he will be posted?
I still am surprised that he's going to be posted this offseason. Whether it happens in a week or 2 weeks, obviously, it doesn't matter. Like I didn't anticipate it. I know that there's been a lot of I don't want to say conflicting information, but a lack of clarity maybe is the best way to put it on, what was in his contract. Would the Marines, I think, right, is the team. I always want to say Mariners, I think, just because we cover MLB.
One letter away.
Yeah. So that, I think, is still most surprising to me, is that he's going to be posted. And I guess, like you said, maybe Roki had the foresight early on to include this clause in his contract. Even then, it's still nothing is clear. I know I got a chance to watch some of your interview with Jim Allen, which unfortunately we weren't able to post because
Matt's the only person that's seen this interview.
We were getting ready to do it, and then the news broke, and Blake and Scott, I know they did a late night show Friday night, and it was Friday or Saturday. I lost
Friday night.
Friday night, and they had a good crowd, and so thank you everybody if you joined in on that one. But yeah, I mean, I didn't anticipate being here this offseason. I'll leave it at that. I thought for sure, it'd be next year, maybe at the earliest, if not once he was a little bit older and could be kind of like the Yamamoto type free agent rather than more so like Shohei Ohtani.
Yeah, and if you missed that, Jim Allen is a guy who's very plugged in, lives in Japan, has reported on baseball over there for a really long time. We had an interview with him, and then 2 hours later, the announcement comes that Sasaki is going to be posted. It's like, well, every question we asked is now obsolete. So we thank Jim for coming. But unfortunately, the interview will not see the light of day. So Shelly, real quick for the super chat. Thank you so much for that super chat. So happy that you were live tonight, Shelly. We are so happy that you're here with us. I know you were a big fan throughout the postseason World Series run. So it's good to have you back in here along with 1,776 of your friends, coincidentally enough. So thank you, Shelly, for being in with us. Here are the particulars on Roki Sasaki. And I never thought I would learn this much about the posting process and international free agency, but I feel like I've done a deep dive and gone down a rabbit hole on this stuff over the last 72 hours or so. So all they have done is say they will post him. Now, the deadline to post him is December 15th. And you might say, well, why do any of these dates matter? Here's why. Once you are posted, you only have 45 days to sign a contract. Otherwise, you go back to the NPB. The reason all this matters is because right in the middle of this time frame, from December 15th to January 15th, you can't sign. It's a dead period. So depending on when your 45 days starts will determine if you have to sign before December 15th or if you have the opportunity to sign after January 15th. And the reason that matters is because if you sign before December 15th, the rules that will be applied to you are the 2024 budgets for international free agency spending, which you can imagine, for the most part, have already been spent by most teams. But if he can hold out until after January 15th, then everybody's pool resets. And while there are probably some verbal agreements that have been made and handshake deals where that money may be committed to, in theory, teams have their full budget available. Now, what does this mean for the Dodgers? Well, if you're a Dodgers fan, you want him to be posted as quickly as humanly possible, because if he gets posted before December 2nd, it will mean he has to sign in the 2024 window. And the Dodgers just so happen to have more money to offer him than anybody else, $2.5 million if he were to sign this year. If he were to roll over and be eligible for 2025, the Dodgers could offer him $5.1 million, which sounds like a great deal for him. That's $2.76 million more. Well, the Dodgers go from having the most money in 2024 to the least money in 2025. And so if money is even slightly part of the equation, the Dodgers would have an advantage if he were posted prior to December 2nd. Now, what's interesting, Matt, is that all of the smoke around this, Bob Nightingale, I think, posted, everybody will be interested and everybody believes that the Dodgers are going to sign him. It seems like folks in Japan believe that the Dodgers might be involved with the clause that was in his contract, the decision to be posted, etc. Jim Allen, who I referenced earlier, had this to say in a series of tweets. He said the Dodgers are not a lock to sign Sasaki. He will go where he thinks it's in his best short-term and long-term interest to go. A source close to Sasaki said a small market team with a solid development setup and plan could be the best destination. He added, in the end, where Sasaki goes is 100% up to him, regardless of what people close to him think is in his best interest. They can only advise him and present him with options, just telling you what I know. He said, because of Lotte's authoritarian restrictions on media access to its players, I've never spoken with Sasaki, so I have less than no clue as to what he is thinking. And so seems like, Matt, the longer this goes on, I'm seeing Dodger fans become slightly less confident that he's going to be a Dodger. Where are you at on all this?
I don't know what to think, honestly. I mean, part on one hand, the fact that he is coming, whether it's before December 2nd or after, his initial earnings on this contract are going to be capped compared to if he had gone like I referenced earlier, the Yamamoto route, where he met the age requirement and 6 years of playing in NPB, and so now he's just a full-fledged free agent, can sign for 300 plus million. So considering that, I'm not inclined to believe that money is a huge factor.
Totally.
The counter to that, though, is if you are already going to be limiting yourself, I would venture to guess that you do want to maximize that potential within reason, right? Like, if you wait for the next international signing period and you can earn $6 million from a team, like, that might be better than the 2.5 or whatever the Dodgers have available right now. And so, like, is that a factor? Like, perhaps I know Jeff Passan also floated the idea that, a smaller market could be something that appeals to Sasaki. The fandom side of all this is he just saw Shohei Ohtani and Yoshinobu Yamamoto win a World Series with the Dodgers. He has somewhat of a relationship with, I think, Yamamoto more so than Ohtani.
But was on the World Baseball Classic team with both of them.
Right, but played with both of them. So why wouldn't he? Like, I think that the Dodgers have heavily scouted him for several years. And not that they've been alone in that regard. I think, we saw the question that we believe was going to be about Roki Sasaki and international money during the World Series, and Andrew Friedman shut it down. I think he didn't, he obviously didn't want to go anywhere near that at the time. I would be hard. Like, there are a lot of, I'm kind of torn because well, part of me is torn, but then if you really look at it, I would be hard pressed to believe that Sasaki would not want to join this situation with the Dodgers. There's the comfort, there's the not long history of success, but again, you just saw Ohtani Yamamoto win a World Series, right? And these are two of your fellow countrymen that you have a relationship with. Like, why not get to play with them? I think the other part of this too is not 100% confirmed, but it has been out there for multiple people that Joel Wolf of Wasserman is either already representing Sasaki or will represent him once he's officially posted.
I'm sure they waited until all of the appropriate timelines and hurdles had been cleared, Matt.
And who does, among other players, who does Joel Wolf happen to represent? Well, none other than Yoshinobu Yamamoto. He does, I think, also represent Yu Darvish. And I know that the Padres have been identified as, I don't know if you want to call them a dark horse, but a potential landing spot as well. But yeah, I mean, I would be shocked if he doesn't sign with the Dodgers. I think ultimately, even as I, talked myself through this back and forth thing, and I apologize for everybody who had to listen to that live, I felt like it was all over the place. Ultimately, I would be surprised if it's not with the Dodgers.
Yeah. I posted this on social media. I said there's 3 reasons why I think the Dodgers have to be considered heavy favorites. The first is, if you are limiting the signing bonus that you get initially, you would probably be asking yourself, well, where can I make the most money off of the field? And the answer clearly would be the Dodgers. When I did talk to Jim Allen, one of the things that was really, really interesting was that there are people in Japan who believe that behind Roki Sasaki, there may be one of the massive marketing companies in Japan that is kind of pushing for this decision to be made, for him to be posted, for him to come to the United States now, maybe quote unquote, before he is ready, before he can, turn 25, etc. That same company, coincidentally or not coincidentally enough, represents Yoshinobu Yamamoto and was involved there. So I think the fact that if you're only going to make between $2.5 and $8 million on your signing bonus, I would imagine for the next 7 years, you would want to be making as much money off the field as humanly possible. LA, the partnership with Ohtani and Yamamoto, all those things offer him the most money there. Second, if your goal is to come over and be developed so that in 7 years, you can sign a $400 million contract, what organization in Major League Baseball gives you the best chance of being developed, growing than the Los Angeles Dodgers? None. Third, there's the best chance to win. Like, you're going to be the World Series favorite next year if you sign with the Dodgers. And then somebody pointed out, which I believe was a point made by Blake and Scott on the show on Friday night, was the Dodgers also offer him a 6-man rotation. The Dodgers haven't officially come out and said it necessarily, but we all know that with Yamamoto and Ohtani, if he's in the starting rotation, it's going to be a 6-man rotation. And so if you're Sasaki, that would give you the comfort level to adjust to Major League Baseball, to adjust to baseball in the United States. And so I look at all of those things and I read the tweet from Jim Allen about short-term and long-term. And even if I back up and say, hey, I'm a Dodgers fan, try and take off as much of the Dodger blue as I possibly can and evaluate this, I just don't understand, if money is essentially equal, why you would pick any team. Now, Ohtani picked a different team. So like, it's definitely possible that he could pick a different team. I just don't understand what the logic would be, especially if you have people like Joel Wolf and this big marketing company who have been around the block a little bit and saying like, hey, like, let's not choose Milwaukee. Yes, maybe they develop pitchers well, but like, you're going to max out there. You're not going to win a lot of games. You're not going to be on a national stage, etc. Why would you not want to come to the Dodgers, be developed, get the exposure, potentially win, prove yourself on the biggest stage, and set yourself up for the biggest contract possible?
Yeah, I think, you mentioned the Ohtani thing. Like, that was surprising. I do see, who is this commenting? Joseph says if NL had DH back then, he 100% would have chosen LA. I think that is a factor. I think in talking to some of the Japanese reporters who covered Ohtani with the Angels and then made the jump to the Dodgers, like, there was also a little bit of a sentiment of Ohtani didn't want to necessarily do what everybody was expecting him to do. Because I know when he was posted 6 years ago, or 7 years ago, it's now, maybe it would have been, there's a lot of expectation that it was going to be the Dodgers. And so, maybe did he want to break the mold and go against the grain in that regard? I don't know if that is a factor with Sasaki right now. I think one thing that we don't necessarily know, and I haven't seen one way or the other from him, is if if you sign with the Dodgers, there obviously is going to be a ton of pressure, not just on him, but on the team in general. Yeah. And is that something that maybe he would want to avoid as he adjusts to life as a young major league player in the United States, completely new country for him? Perhaps. So I think, like, if that is a fact, and again, there hasn't been any indications that is the case, but if that is something that he maybe wants to kind of avoid initially, then I could see where he doesn't end up with the Dodgers. But like you said, like, being objective as we can, you'd be hard pressed to find a better situation than signing with the Dodgers. Like, not only competing for a World Series, not only a strong track record of helping pitchers and developing, and look, the injury stuff aside, like, that's become an issue across the sport. But again, I think that I believe a big draw is, look, like, Ohtani and Yamamoto are there as well. Like, they will help you adjust to living in LA and in the clubhouse and getting acclimated in that sense. And so, yeah, I mean, I don't know, trying to put myself in his shoes as coming from Japan, how do you, like, turn down certainly the biggest superstar from your country, and then, for at least for now, if not somebody you're going to pass, the most accomplished pitcher?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, you have to imagine Yamamoto is up there. Ohtani's in a tier of his own, I imagine, in Japan. But I imagine Yamamoto, in a country that loves baseball as much as they do, having a guy who has the richest contract in pitching history on that team. And so we'll see. I mean, because again, the only thing I could think is, to your point, does he not want the pressure? Is he afraid of the moment? This guy's pitched in the World Baseball Classic for his country alongside Ohtani and Yamamoto. So if you want to talk about pressure, like, I would bet if you asked Ohtani and Yamamoto how World Series pressure compared to World Baseball Classic pressure, that it's either a push or the World Baseball Classic was a little more stressful for them than the World Series was. So I see Hawaiian Kira. What positives would there be to going to a small market? Again, there are other organizations, the Guardians, the Brewers, that come to mind. Obviously, the Rays. There are teams that have, like, a history of developing pitchers pretty well. And so I could see that being the draw. But again, like, are those really better than the Dodgers? And would all of the cost, the financial losses of all the marketing money lost, the opportunity to win, like, I can't imagine if Ohtani was given the chance to go back and say, hey, would you want to go to Anaheim again? To your point, yes, DH. So maybe the National League was crossed off, but I just can't imagine he would stay in that same place. And so, if they do have a relationship, I imagine he's saying like, hey, what was that process like? And he's like, I kind of wish we would have won at some point. I didn't want to go to a place for 7 years where I wasn't guaranteed anything. Whereas the Dodgers are literally winning the division in the postseason every single year. You're guaranteed an opportunity at a World Series.
Yeah. I mean, it'll come down to obviously personal preference. And this is stuff that we don't necessarily know. Like, we just obviously being in the United States and not in Japan, like there are some question marks surrounding Sasaki. And then I think there also, as I mentioned earlier, have been some conflicting or at least differing reports on him. And look, I think another thing to this too is layered in to all of this is, so maybe some health concerns. And I don't think that the Dodgers would really shy away from that stuff. Like he did come back and pitch, and I know it's come out now that he had shoulder fatigue, I think is what they're calling it. And I think even an oblique issue at some point this year. But yeah, I mean, I still, like I said, as much as I could see like either scenario unfolding, I would be surprised if ultimately it's not the Dodgers, just because I think there are too many chips you can stack in their favor.
Yeah, and Graham asks a question. He says, do you think if he posts before December 1st that he's a Dodger? Again, if he posts before December 1st, then he would have to sign under the 2024 budgets. We would take more reasons off the table for why he might choose another team. Like, because then the one thing in 2025 you can make a case is like, to your point, hey, I know the gap between 7.5 and 5 million isn't all that much, but that's a 50% increase. And that's still millions of dollars to somebody who's 7 years away from making serious money. If he posts in 2024, the Dodgers literally can offer him the most money of everybody else up front. And so I think if the team gets 20% of the posting fee, which is why they wouldn't be motivated to post him unless they pretty much had to. So I do think there's a pretty good chance that the team is going to want him to get posted after that December 2nd date. Has to be before December 15th. But if they post him December, 3rd through 15, then the money they get, the 20% of the signing bonus, may go from, $500,000 to $1.6 million, which I imagine is not nothing. So I think if it's before December 1st, that's a great sign if you're a Dodgers fan. Again, if it's after December 1st, I don't think it's no chance, but I have to imagine if the Dodgers can also offer you the most money, I don't know how you choose something else. So, yeah, so we'll see. I see we've got a super chat in here that's going to lead us straight into our next conversation. Not Jeff Spiegel says, if we get Roki, do you still go after a top 5 starting pitcher? A top free agent starting pitcher. There was an interesting interview. Mookie Betts had Dave Roberts on his podcast, and he asked Dave Roberts what his wish list was for the offseason. Basically, to some degree, asking him a similar question to this without using specific names. It's a pretty funny interview because Dave is basically like, well, I'm not allowed to use specific names, but ... These were the 4 things that he mentioned, Matt, and I'd love to get your thoughts. He said, I would love to bring back a bullpen arm that got us a lot of outs. I would like a high leverage reliever. I would like a starting pitcher. And I would like to bring back an outfielder who had some big home runs and who might be from Latin America. Now I'm paraphrasing there, but bring back a bullpen arm, a high leverage reliever, a starting pitcher, and bring back an outfielder who had big home runs and maybe from Latin America. So number 1 has to be Blake Trinan, I imagine. Number 4 has to be Teoscar Hernández, I would imagine. And then in between, you've got high leverage reliever and a starting pitcher. Now, my text to you was, is he assuming Walker Buehler and Clayton Kershaw are already back and don't need to be included on this list? Is he assuming Clayton Kershaw is, and then Walker Buehler's the starting pitcher, although he didn't use the language of bring back? What did you make of Dave Roberts' wish list here, Matt?
The thing that stood out to me most was specifying a high leverage reliever after already saying bring back somebody who got us a lot of outs. Because like you said, my mind when he said the first one was, okay, well, that's Blake Trinan and it makes sense.
Yep.
But then to then like basically name a second relief pitcher, if you will, by saying, a high leverage guy, like not only is he saying we need another bullpen piece, but we need another high leverage. And so I know Tanner Scott is somebody we've done, our offseason shows. here, and Tanner Scott is a popular name. He was popular at the trade deadline as well before he got sent to the Padres. I'd have to look at the full list, but he was at least first that came to mind for me. And I thought, like, is that something the Dodgers could ultimately do? Which, sure, but even though Andrew Friedman historically doesn't spend a ton on the bullpen, so that was most interesting to me. And the starting pitching thing, I don't think he was referencing Buehler, and I believe that stems from, hey, we might lose this guy because there could be a team, like we've talked about, there could be a team that comes in and just makes him an offer that the Dodgers aren't going to feel comfortable matching.
Yeah.
Clayton Kershaw, I think, goes without saying because he has said, I will be back. Like, it's just a matter of figuring it out later type thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think, whether it's Sasaki, whether it's Corbin Burns, Blake Snell, maybe even, a third level to mid-tier starter perhaps. But yeah, I don't think mentioning a starting pitcher applies to Kershaw or Buehler.
So I'm with you. I think obviously Kershaw, he's not going to show up on any free agent list because technically he's a free agent. He's already publicly announced where he's coming to pitch next year. What's interesting is let's start with the bullpen. Dave mentions high leverage reliever. Right now, here are the guys that are on the 40-man roster in the bullpen. And there's more guys than this on the 40-man roster. That's the nicest way I can say that. These are the guys that I think are either definitely going to be back next year, are being paid a lot of money, or contributed in some way this year. Michael Kopech, Evan Phillips. If Blake Trinan is on the group, I'll include him here because Dave said he wanted him back. Vesia, Bonda, Gratterall, Enriquez, Ryan Brazier, who's still under contract, Michael Grove, who was on the NLDS roster. So that's 9. And we mentioned a 6-man rotation. So you've really only got 7 spots in a bullpen. That also doesn't include any of the guys who don't make the rotation, because let me read you the list of starting pitchers that are theoretically going to be healthy for opening day next year and are currently on the 40-man roster, especially if we're counting Kershaw and Buehler here. But Ohtani, who knows? Yamamoto, Glasnow, allegedly. And then you've got, if they get Sasaki, Kershaw, Buehler, so we'll just group those 3. Bobby Miller, Dustin May, Tony Gonsolin, Ben Kasparias, Justin Robleski, Nick Frasso, Kyle Hurt, and Landon Knack. So Ohtani, Yamamoto, Glasnow, Miller, May, Gonsolin, Kasparias, Robleski, Frasso, Hurt, and Knack. That's 11 starting pitchers. Kershaw would make 12, Buehler would make 13, and Sasaki would make 14. I'll just be honest. I do the math, and I understand, like, wanting a starting pitcher, going out and replacing a guy like Jack Flaherty, all that kind of a thing. If you don't get Sasaki, sure. But if they get Roki Sasaki, Matt, I don't necessarily see, like, there's always a need. I get that. But you also only have 40 spots on the 40-man roster.
Yeah, I agree. I think for me, and I would guess that Dave saying a starting pitcher does apply to pitchers not named Kershaw and Buehler. So one of Sasaki, Burns, Snell,
Fried,
yada yada yada. Yeah, maybe even Flaherty, Fried type thing. Like I think he meant one of that group because yes, Kershaw, you can count him as a pitcher, but who knows when he's going to be active? Like there is no timeline for him to like it could be a repeat of this year where he's not coming off the 60-day until the middle of the season, more or less. The Ohtani thing I can clear up for you. He's not going to be pitching before middle of April at the earliest, I would say. I think May would be probably the most likely. The Glasnow thing, that could go either way. So, that's why I do think, regardless whether it's Sasaki, who obviously we just discussed at length, or it's Corbin Burns, like I think the Dodgers do need to acquire a relatively top tier, if not an ace, a very good number 2 starting pitcher for next season. I know some of that may depend on what happens with Juan Soto, and we're going to get into him. And I don't know. Have you had a chance to discuss Juan Soto on one of our live shows yet?
I haven't yet, but I'm ready to cook, Matt. I'm ready to cook.
Be ready, because the minute you say, and I mean, we'll have to watch the chat now. The minute you say his name, the second you say his name, it becomes a polarizing topic of yes, go get him. No, absolutely not. So just be ready for that. But yeah, back to Dave's thing. I do think they need a starting pitcher. So not named Kershaw or Buehler.
Yeah. Let's get to a couple super chats and then we'll get into Juan Soto. 300 says, question, does Ohtani count against the 13 pitcher limit even though he DHs, or can the Dodgers call up another pitcher on the day he does not pitch? He doesn't count as a pitcher, period. So with Ohtani in the group, you can have 14. So that's a great question because I was mentioning the 6-man rotation. They'll basically be able to have, when Ohtani is pitching, a 6-man rotation that on the roster looks like a 5-man rotation. So that's the advantage to Ohtani, is that you can carry an extra pitcher because he does not count, and you don't have to designate him as a pitcher on days that he pitches or anything like that. He's available whenever they want to use him as a pitcher in theory. So good question, good clarification. Jonathan says, treat the rotation like the pen. We can't find stable, healthy starting pitchers, so just throw pre-arbitration guys and non-roster invitees at it. See who gets hot. Money for Soto, not for Fried. The one thing I will say, Jonathan, the bullpen, yes, absolutely. Like Bonda, Evan Phillips. I mean, you could just go down the list. Even Michael Kopech they had to acquire. He had like a 5 ERA when they acquired him. Bullpen, yes. That's why, like Tanner Scott, the money that he's probably going to get, I'm not really that interested in. Treinen, yes, because we've seen him do it. It's probably a 1-year deal. I'm good with it. But the one thing that makes me motivated to go sign a starting pitcher is every year we get to the trade deadline. And this year we were like, look, if they don't get somebody, these prices are stupid. Like to go get these guys at the deadline, that I'm almost like, just sign them now. Just get 20 of them now and figure the rest of it out later. So that would be my motivation. But again, if Buehler is back and Sasaki is back, that's enough for me. Like my free agent wish list would be Juan Soto, who we're going to get into, Sasaki, bring back Buehler, Kershaw, and Treinen, and then that's it for me. So that would be my wish list: is Soto, Sasaki, Buehler, Kershaw, Treinen. Obviously, that's a lofty list. My parents would look at me and say, pick 2 of these, 3 things, not all 5 of them. But I think Buehler, Sasaki, Kershaw would be enough for me on the starting pitching side.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the big, and as much as you rattled off some of the depth on the pitching side that the Dodgers have, in theory, at least for now, assuming full health, which is obviously always a dangerous game. The beauty with a lot of that, though, is look, even somebody like Bobby Miller, if you need to start him in AAA next season, you can.
Yep.
Like, yes,
a lot of those guys I mentioned, Robleski, Knack,
right?
Fiasso,
Yeah, those guys,
all those guys can be in the minors, but they do have to be on the 40-man.
Yeah, but that's like that. I mean, the Dodgers will figure it out. And look, maybe they end up trading, one of them type thing in a deal at some point. And so I'm not too worried about the 40-man. I think my bigger concern is setting the active roster and then finding your 6 starters, if you will.
Yeah.
A lot of those young guys will obviously, yes, they got a chance this year. It was unexpected in some cases. So there's no reason, like there's no expectation or pressure for the Dodgers to have them up at the major league level, or they might be disgruntled. And even somebody like Bobby Miller, he went into the 2024 season with pretty lofty expectations. It didn't pan out. And I know that there was some injury stuff that he pitched through, so fine. But the reality is the results were not there. So that if the Dodgers say, hey, we need to start you in Oklahoma City, which I know we have an Alex Friedman interview that we're going to be publishing this week, the Comets that they are now known as. It's justified and it's warranted. And so that's like, you stash those guys there and you figure out the rest later.
Yeah. Jonathan says, sorry, don't trust the Dodgers to sign pitchers. And, I kind of get it. Like they've tried to go bargain shopping lately. Paxton, it didn't work. Syndergaard, it didn't work. Now, if you go back the year before that, Tyler Anderson worked fantastically. Andrew Heaney worked pretty well. So it's been hit or miss, more miss. They've taken one shot each of the last 2 years and they've gone 0 for 2 in that category. And if it could have been higher than 0 for 2, it would have been higher than 0 for 2. Syndergaard as an 0 for 1 feels like it should be an 0 for 5 all by itself. But I understand the sentiment, Jonathan. I tend to just defer to trusting the Dodgers in all things, but I understand the sentiment. So let's talk Juan Soto. And this has been a polarizing topic among Dodgers fans. And so I just wanted to, the more I've thought about it, and the more I've dove into it, like my stance on Juan Soto is, and I have shared this, but I haven't gone into detail. Juan Soto is not just he's not just a great player. He's not even just an elite player. Like Juan Soto will likely finish his career as one of the best players ever to play Major League Baseball. Like I would look at the categories of a guy like Freddie Freeman. Freddie Freeman is going to be a Hall of Famer. Freddie Freeman is a great player. Freddie Freeman is not one of the greatest players to ever play the game in a small category of players that I think Shohei Ohtani is going to be in, that I think Juan Soto is going to be in. Heck, I don't even know if Mookie Betts is going to be in that category. Like I'm talking, the group of guys that we are talking about here is very, very small, which is why I think Juan Soto deserves every dollar that he's going to make, and I hope the Dodgers pay him. I put together a little chart for you here, Matt.
Before you
please.
put that up, are you reading did I not warn you about Juan Soto? Like, look at
I haven't been reading the comments because I'm focusing on my thoughts here.
All right, go for it. It's all over the place.
Okay, here we go, folks. Hopefully I got some people convinced at the end. Okay, so I went and did some digging at the thing about Soto that I cannot stress enough. And I got in an argument with somebody on Twitter today. I got blocked for liking Juan Soto so much. Juan Soto is going in. He literally just turned 26. Like, he just turned 26, like in the end of October. So the number of guys that reach free agency at an age like 25, 26, and 27 almost never happens. And it's a reason why a lot of these guys sign the biggest contracts ever. So here is a chart with some names that you're going to be familiar with. These are guys that signed massive, massive contracts as a free agent at 25, 26, and 27. All right. I apologize if the text is small here, and I'm not going to read everything on here, but I'll summarize some of this. So I'm comparing Juan Soto to Alex Rodriguez, Bryce Harper, Mookie Betts, Corey Seager, and Manny Machado. These are all guys who hit free agency at either 25, 26, 27, or 28. Now, Mookie Betts, I'm including here. He would have hit free agency going into his 27-year season. Obviously, he didn't because the Dodgers re-signed him before then. The rest of these guys all hit free agency, okay? I've got in this one next row, pre-free agency stats. Below that, pre-free agency wins above replacement, okay? So here's what you have to know. Juan Soto has accumulated 36.3 wins above replacement through his age 25 season. That's more than all of the rest of these guys. A-Rod at 35, Mookie Betts at 34.8 are the only two who are close. Bryce Harper is 8 wins above replacement less. Corey Seager, 15 below. Manny Machado is actually the one who surprised me. A, how young he was when he hit free agency, and B, how good he had been, okay? So Soto is better than all of these guys. Like, if you look at some of the more generic numbers, he has 201 home runs. That's 12 more home runs than Alex Rodriguez had when he hit it. And we know how many home runs Alex Rodriguez ended up hitting. Okay, his on-base percentage, 35 points higher than any of these guys, with a slugging percentage that only trailed Alex Rodriguez. So from just a numbers perspective, okay, so the contracts all these guys signed, you know, A-Rod, of course, a long time ago, $250 million. He then opted out and signed another 10-year, $275 million deal. Crazy. 300 plus for Harper, Betts, Seager, and Machado. Okay. So what did these guys do post free agency once they hit free agency? Alex Rodriguez put up 7 wins above replacement a year on average for the next 10 years. Folks, that is insane. That is insane. But as I'm going to say, that's the tier we're swimming in with Juan Soto. Okay. Harper, 4.5 a year. Mookie, 5.5 a year. Seager, 5.1. Machado, 4.4. Again, these guys haven't finished their contracts. I look at this, Matt. The floor is 4.4 wins above replacement, which is a very, very, very good player, right? That's Manny Machado, Bryce Harper over the past 6 years. You can look at accomplishments as well. If you look at the accomplishments here, 3 of the 5 of these won a World Series in the life of their contract. Again, 4 of the 5 of these guys are still playing. 2 won MVPs. All 5 had at least one top 5 MVP over the first 5 or 6 years, okay? The price has gone up on this. I understand all that. But here's one more comparison that I want to make, because Grant Bisbee of The Athletic made this note, and I thought it was really, really fascinating. I mentioned that a lot of guys don't hit free agency this young. So he said, well, what would it have looked like if Albert Pujols and Miguel Cabrera had hit free agency at the same age that Juan Soto is? Like, if you could have signed Albert Pujols to a 10-year contract going into his age 26 season, Miguel Cabrera at a 10-year contract going into his age 26 season, what would that have looked like? Well, here's the answer. Okay, again, these are not real contracts, but over the next 10 years, these guys averaged 5 to 5.2 wins above replacement a year for 10 years. Now, if you dig in, the first 6 years, it was like a 7 to 8 wins above replacement, and then it tailed off for both of these guys. But look at the accomplishments. Pujol goes on 2 World Series, 2 MVPs, and finishes top 5 in MVP voting 3 more times. Cabrera wins 2 MVPs, finishes in the top 5 2 more times. Like, my point in all of this, Matt, is I'm trying to establish we cannot compare him even to Bryce Harper. Like, Bryce Harper's the first name that I think pops to mind for a lot of people. And it's like, well, this is like when Bryce Harper was a free agent. Soto is not in Bryce Harper's tier. Soto, in my estimation, is above Bryce Harper. He's above all of these guys. He's above Mookie Betts. He's above Manny Machado, Corey Seager. Like, he is an all-timer. He will be one of the best hitters to ever play Major League Baseball. And here's the last comp, and then I'm going to stop talking. I apologize. I've been soaking up all the air. I really think, like, I was trying to think, like, who's the player that I could compare him to that I would say, like, if you could sign this guy for the next 7 years, entering his prime, by the way, Juan Soto, like he's not in his prime yet, entering his prime. If you could get this guy, would you do it? I think the comp is Manny Ramirez. Like, I think if you sign Juan Soto right now, you're getting 7 prime Manny Ramirez years in the next 7 years, and then you see what happens. I know he can't play defense. He put up the wins above replacement despite being terrible at defense all these years. That's how good he is offensively. So that's my case, Matt. Pay him all the dollars, like generational talent. Don't screw this up. Go after Juan Soto and figure out the defense later.
I get it. I can see where that makes sense. My hesitation is paying as much, like I'm assuming he's going to end up getting, 550, 600, but like something.
Yeah, The Athletic has, I believe it's 613 million. Is that the number? Let me look this up.
I mean, that sounds right.
I think it's 13 years, 613 million. I could be wrong. I can't find it in my notes right now.
And when I brought this up on one of our other live shows, I think I was on with Scott last week.
13 for 611.
Somebody mentioned that Soto would probably bet. So my hesitation is, like, I don't even think he's average defensively.
Oh, he's bad. He's really bad.
And I know that there have been a lot
dramatically worse than Teoscar Hernández defensively.
So to me, it's not an apples to apples thing, because one of them is going to get paid
fair
$35 million a year, maybe, right? Like,
oh yeah, less than that. Yeah.
So like anywhere from 23 to 35. Let's just do a wide range like that. And the other, you're looking at a $600 million long-term contract. So on a personal level, like I don't want, like, I mentally, like, kind of have a hard time reconciling paying. I mean, it's not my money, which we joke, like we kind of joke about all the time. But like doling a team doling out a contract of that caliber to a player who is so deficient in an area. Look, if the Dodgers didn't have Ohtani, then they could DH Soto.
Totally.
Pay him whatever it takes then. Assuming Ohtani wasn't on the market as well. Which that would be interesting if these guys both hit free agency at the same time.
Yeah.
So that's honestly my biggest obstacle. I get all the hitting stuff. You did throw up a lot of numbers that came from a computer, so I'm just.
I threw up home runs and batting average around there. I don't know if you saw that.
There was a little too much WAR before a contract, WAR after the contract, and so my mind is just telling me, "Hey, block all of this out. Don't pay attention to it." But yeah, in all seriousness, like I said, my biggest hangup is potentially paying that much for a player who is very clearly kind of one-dimensional, if you will.
Yeah.
Like there isn't a huge stolen base threat. Like it is all offense. And I understand that it is offense at a remarkable Hall of Fame, unprecedented pace and level at this age.
Yeah.
That's my reluctance there. The other side though, and I go back and forth with it because I'm also the same person who will say, like, put as much talent on the team as possible and figure it out later, which I think the Dodgers are of the mind.
Yeah.
But yes, I don't think the Soto Teoscar comparisons defensively are fair. And back to, actually, I got sidetracked. Back to what
real quick, Teoscar benefits from playing on the Dodgers as well. Like we saw what Yankees coaching and defensive situations are.
Right.
So I do think Teoscar probably benefits from the Dodgers put guys in better positions, and they probably grade out slightly better in LA than they would elsewhere. But I didn't mean to interrupt.
Right. And that's that's fine. And that's what I was meant to bring up earlier before I sidetracked myself. When I was on with Scott, somebody did mention that hey, the Dodgers would probably have him better positioned than the Yankees have, and that might help things. And sure, at that point, if he becomes average, then great. I think the other thing too is for me, and here's the old man yelling at the clouds. Like, you stick your, what do we want to call it, subpar defender in left field, right? But I don't think so. Like, I think Soto is worse in left field than he is right field, or at least that was the case this year. And so that would also worry me too. Like, I don't necessarily want him playing right field on top of being somewhat of a defensive liability.
Yeah. Look, and I want to be clear that, like, I am not naive to any of the one-dimensional stuff. I actually embrace it, and I'm trying to communicate that that's just how much I believe in this guy offensively. Like, this guy was compared to Ted Williams. Like that was his offensive comp by like Jeff Passan, not by crazy people.
Yeah, it wasn't something I fully agreed with or still do agree with. I don't know. It's just I think the problem, like you start doing stuff like that, and you set an expectation that this player, this hitter, needs to be otherworldly, and I know in some aspects he is and was, but we also just saw him. I mean, look, the Dodgers played Soto in the NLDS, and he struggled in that playoffs in the Mets series before the Padres and the Dodgers met in the NLDS a couple years ago, and then did like kind of get hot, if you will. But it wasn't like he didn't go on a Freddie Freeman run, right? Where, oh man, every time he's coming to the plate, he's hitting a home run or a double type thing. So that's like when you start throwing around, all-time greats, like I don't know. I felt like that was a little bit premature. I could understand why from a statistic standpoint that was happening, but
he has a 150 weighted runs created plus for his career in the postseason, for what it's worth. I know we saw a 5-game sample size that what it was. I mean, this is a guy who's never had an on-base percentage below 400. And we're talking about a guy who played 116 games as a 19-year-old, hit 22 home runs, hit 292, and had an OPS of 923. Like the weighted runs created plus is 146 or high, 143 or higher every single season. The last 3 years, 180, 154, 146, 146, 164, 202. Like again, it's a crazy amount of money. The money is just stupid. Like you almost just have to forget what the average annual value is because this is the money. I'm trying to emphasize, and I people can disagree with me. I'm not the guy that thinks you're stupid if you disagree with me, obviously. I'm just saying, like, I think sometimes in our mind, we put a cap on how good we think a guy could be because we don't have categories for him. And Shohei Ohtani is able to get outside of that because he does something we've never seen before. It's like, well, he pitches and he hits. Oh my gosh, I don't have a category for that. Okay, so now I'm willing to allow myself to get to a place of expectations and understanding for somebody that doesn't make sense to me, that didn't previously make sense. And I think with Soto, we tend to do the same thing because we see a guy who's below average defensively, isn't a physical specimen, doesn't run, all of that we just say, like, he must be like, well, he's just like Mookie Betts or Bryce Harper. And like, even if he were just that, he would be amazing. And I think he's genuinely, as a hitter, way better than all of those guys, like way better than all of those guys. He is going to be, when he is finished, one of the greatest hitters in Major League history. And for me, like, I'm not just spend $1 billion every single offseason and get whoever the biggest guy is. Like, if Juan Soto wasn't a free agent right now, I would say sign Teoscar Hernández and wake me up when the season starts. Juan Soto is the guy that, like, spend all of it. Spend all the money on him and then don't worry about it for the next few years because I just think he's generationally that good.
It's fair. And it's definitely a fascinating situation. Like, I can't remember a free agent of his caliber.
Wow. Blake and I agreeing, by the way. Blake just gave the Manny Ramirez comp, which is the same comp that I dropped about 10 minutes ago, Blake. So it's scary season when Blake and I are saying the same things, Matt.
I can't remember, and maybe you can't. Like, I don't know if there's been a free agent that's been this polarizing.
I'm sure Bryce Harper was, just because of his, like, the way he plays the game.
I feel like a lot of, like, I mean, we weren't doing these live shows, but obviously when we were sharing stuff on social media, like, there was a lot of, hey, yes, get it done, sign him. Where with Soto, like, I feel like it's almost 70-30, don't do it type thing, which is surprising because, yes, like, typically a lot of our followers, understandably so, and I do fall in that same bucket of whether it's the Dodgers or any team you're discussing, like, for the most part, if there's great talent out there, like, yes, like, put all the best players on the team and try to figure it out. And not that talent wins everything, but I would rather take my chances with 10 really talented players instead of 2 and, trying to go win a World Series. But I don't know. I part of me wonders if some of it is because I would assume that if they sign Juan Soto, that Teoscar Hernández probably is not in the equation,
I would imagine,
anymore. And Teoscar clearly endeared himself to the fan base. And so is that the reason why, there's a lot of negative opinions towards Juan Soto? Is it where I sort of fall, the money would be better spent elsewhere, i.e. the starting rotation, which I guess, like, look, on one hand, maybe Roki Sasaki helps you address that at a very low cost and a team-friendly deal, but also he is a little bit, not a little bit, he is unproven. Like he's an unknown commodity at the major league level. So you don't necessarily know how that would go. And, Corbin Burns is obviously out there. And yes, he could struggle, but there is a long track record of being an ace. And I could see him fitting well on this team. And so it's an interesting case study, if you will. All of this being said, and you put together a compelling case. I don't disagree with a lot of the things you raised. Ultimately, what's not the most interesting, but what is pretty interesting is I don't think the Dodgers are going to end up signing him anyway.
Soto.
And if yes, do you?
I would not bet. It would not be in the likely or the probably category to me. I just think that you have to at least inquire, and I don't think the Dodgers will be the most desperate. Would be kind of where I would land.
I agree. I think Scott, and I saw Scott commenting in here earlier, and he put it well, I thought, on our live show Thursday night when I was on with him. He basically called it Plan Zero, where you make the phone call, you see where things are kind of at, where they might go, and you decide from there.
Yeah. Real quick, some numbers for you. Teoscar Hernández in left field last year, and I want to clarify. Fielding stats are largely unhelpful. They exist. They're maybe better than nothing, but like I wouldn't bet my life on any of these being accurate. In left field, which we're comparing left field to right field, so full disclosure there. In left field, he was -8. This is Teoscar. -8 defensive runs saved, -9 outs above average. In right field, Juan Soto, which is where he played the majority, he was -1 defensive run save, -5 outs above average. So both of those numbers were actually better than Teoscar Hernandez's as far as how he graded out defensively. So that's all I'm saying, throwing that out there. But I do want to acknowledge the point you made. I do think the Dodgers would be choosing between Teoscar Hernández and Juan Soto, because I think the goal should be get one of those guys, and then the other corner outfielder becomes some combination of Dalton Rushing, who is learning to play the outfield, and Andy Pages, who has proven that he deserves at least a chance. I also don't think you can have both of them defensively in the corners and expect for anything positive to happen once the ball gets out there. I think the bats would more than compensate for the defense, but I see somebody saying, why are you pushing Soto? I find it so interesting that there is such a debate. Like to your point, he is such a polarizing player, and I don't fully understand. Like, I understand the defense. I understand that, like, the way he plays the game maybe isn't everybody's cup of tea, although he doesn't come across to me like Machado does, or Tatis, or some of those guys. Like, he doesn't come across to me as like overly arrogant. But I guess it's just eye of the beholder. Is it arrogance or is it playfulness?
I think to some people he does.
It's fair. It's fair. Again, for me, he doesn't, and he played on the Padres, so it's not like he was playing for my favorite team, and that's why I think that. It's just it's so interesting to me to hear like the way that a lot of the people that I follow and that I respect, the way that they cover baseball and the way that they talk about Juan Soto compared to, just the sort of the masses of, then you poll like thousands of people, and the difference between opinions in those two is just, it's intriguing to me. It's interesting to me. And, over the next 10 years, we'll figure out who's right and who is wrong. I guess over the course of it. I do want to say on my list, shifting away from Soto here momentarily, do you have on your list a shortstop, or how are you navigating the center field / shortstop? Tommy Edman can play one. Who's playing the other?
Yeah, I mean, Willy Adames is the biggest name out there, and I've not been particularly high on him since the trade interest picked up. I started last offseason. I don't know. Scott wants me to say it. I'm not sure.
I know him and Blake are big Willy Adames guys. Is that what he wants you to say?
Maybe, but I said this when I was on with Scott, so I'm not sure. Like, he knows that I'm not a big Adames guy. That being said, like, if I'm comfortable, I think the Tommy Edman thing is, the Dodgers are in a great position in that regard, because if for whatever reason, there's a center fielder who can unexpectedly be included in a trade, for maybe you're trading for a starting pitcher. And I know Crochet's the biggest name. I don't know, I'm not necessarily alluding to Luis Robert in this case, but you never know. Like, maybe a center fielder becomes available as part of a different trade.
Yeah.
You feel comfortable plugging Tommy Edman in at shortstop, and vice versa. Say a shortstop becomes available as part of a trade that you're working on. You plug Tommy Edman in center field, and you're perfectly comfortable. So I don't feel too strong. My confidence in Tommy Edman is to play either position. I prefer him. Maybe this is what Scott wants me to say. I'm pretty sure I shared this. I prefer Edman more as a center fielder than shortstop. Okay. And I'm not, I admitted that I'm not basing this on like having a ton of data other than like just kind of feeling and trusting my eyes a little bit. But I think the Dodgers are in a great position in that regard where he could play either one adequately. And so you just try to find, the best player available, whether it's free agency or a trade, and then go from there.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like looking at the top free agency list, like the Athletic, I think put out a top 40. There are no center fielders anywhere on the top 40. So center field is going to be a far harder place to find a solution. Obviously, people like me who hold out hope for longer than other folks still believe that maybe James Outman has a future at some point at the major league level, and maybe one day it's with the Dodgers. He is a really good defensive player, so he has that going for him. If a Juan Soto ends up in one of the corner outfield spots, that might be of value. But I've said this, and look, if I'm just going to get all my takes that are going to make people mad out in one night, let's just do that. Like, I don't understand the rush to trade Gavin Lux, so I'm fine with Mookie Betts playing shortstop and Gavin Lux playing second base. Gavin Lux was a very, very good offensive player in the second half of his first season back, coming off of major knee surgery. He costs you almost nothing because he's still on his rookie contract. Mookie Betts has played shortstop. That can be your solution for 2025. Doesn't have to be your solution for the next 5 years. So I'm perfectly fine with that. Edman in center, Mookie at short, Gavin Lux at second. And again, I know people are going to be mad. I don't even need to look at the chat on this one. And that's fine. Like, people have made up their mind on Gavin Lux. I would say prematurely. I think I won that argument about Gavin Lux when everybody buried him except for me. And then he posted a 154 weighted runs created plus in the second half of the season, had the game tying sacrifice fly in game 5 of the game that they won the World Series in. Like, I just think Gavin Lux is, for what he's paying, if people could wipe the brains of what they thought Gavin Lux was going to be 2 years ago and just approach Gavin Lux and look at 2024 Gavin Lux and say, okay, who is this guy? Oh, this is a guy who was averaged out to be a league average offensive player, was a good defensive player, costs you almost nothing, and is still young and recovering from a knee surgery. That's a great thing to have around. But instead, people dislike the idea of Gavin Lux because of how bad he was for so long. And so I think they've already buried him. That's not me. I would have Mookie at short and Gavin Lux at second.
I think a lot of that is true about the perception with Lux. I'm not coming at it from that standpoint because I think I finally did jump off ship as you were still hanging on, but I was trying.
It was the smart thing to do, to be fair.
Daniel and I were, like, the three of us were early on, definitely through the All-Star break and even out of it, preaching patience and saying, hey, like, he missed the full season of baseball. Like, it's going to take some time. For me, that decision, I don't see as viable from the standpoint of, I don't think Mookie playing shortstop is sustainable or the best route for him physically. I think contrary to what Mookie was saying, to what Dave was saying, I think even Andrew Friedman, actually Dave did sort of come around and finally say that, yeah, I think, all the work that Mookie's having to do at shortstop is having an impact on him at the plate. That would be my concern there. And again, like, you're moving Mookie into the infield to preserve him physically, which shortstop does not do that. Second base, I think.
Yeah, but how do we know that? Like, I don't. If it didn't, then why wouldn't they? Like, I think it's clearly they would prefer him at second base, but I don't know if there's actually any real data to say that shortstop is dramatically worse on your body. Like, I mean, maybe quote unquote relative to second base, it's harder. But if the goal is to be better than right field, shortstop could easily be dramatically better than right field.
I would put shortstop, and I feel like I don't have specific names for you, but I feel like players, like former players, have come out and said, like, shortstop and right field, I think, are similar in terms of what's most demanding. There's a reason you see a lot of athletic players playing shortstop, whether, from youth age up on in. And I know, yeah. So I think that kind of tells us, like, what it demands from a player. In my opinion, I think there's just more action there, whether you're having to go to your left or right. And if there is data that comes out that says I'm wrong, then
I don't know if that data exists. I understand how you would get there. In my mind, I'm just thinking, like, both of them are on dirt. Both of them are moving left to right. And I see Scott saying the problem is he's not good at shortstop. Let's keep in mind that Mookie Betts was trying to learn shortstop on the fly. He was named the shortstop like 8 days before opening day, whatever the number was. So again, like give this guy all of spring training to learn how to play shortstop. And is it possible that we get a better version of Mookie Betts playing shortstop? I don't think that's crazy.
I don't think so either. I think for me, it boils down to, I just don't think from a physically demanding standpoint that's a position the Dodgers want him to play. And so for me, like that sort of squeeze, like it's more of that than not believing in Lux being capable of, kind of being a contributing part of the lineup.
Here's an interesting stat for you. I was just looking up like how many balls are hit to second base versus how many balls are hit to shortstop, because we're talking about demanding. So is it possible that shortstop is more action, therefore more left to right? I mean, both positions, you're moving to your left or you're moving to your right. Again, it's on dirt. I just looked up Gavin Lux. He played 1,050 innings and had 179 putouts with 265 assists last year. So add those two numbers up, you're looking at 440. Willy Adames, who played 1,400 more, had 520. So 440 to 520 with about 40% more innings than Adames. So on a per inning basis, shortstop isn't getting more action than second base, for what it's worth. And maybe that doesn't mean anything to anybody, but I just wonder if we're assuming that one of those is better. But again, I said I'm getting all my takes that are going to piss people off at once. So Gavin Lux at shortstop, and Jeff auditioning for a hot take role. Again, if keeping the guy who's already on the roster at second base is the hot take, and going after the guy who's one of the greatest hitters of all time, if that qualifies you, then I suppose so. But I mean, again, if it's not Willy Adames, Ha-Seong Kim is the other name. He's a guy that I've mentioned. Offensively, if you don't like Gavin Lux, let me introduce you to Ha-Seong Kim. I think Kim's interesting from a Dodgers perspective, not personally, like he's not a guy I would spend money on, but he can play all over the place. He's played second. He's played short. I believe he's played some third base as well. So that kind of fits. I could see a guy like that being of value to the Dodgers. But I mean, again, like I'm pro trading for Bo Bichette. Sure. Like if you want to package Gavin Lux and a bunch of other stuff to go get Bo Bichette, great. But like after those 1.5 names that I like Bo Bichette, I don't. Adames is fine. I think Adames would make sense. He's going to cost a lot of money, but not my money. And Ha-Seong Kim, like I'd probably talk myself into, but other than those three, like somebody said Pages in center field. Like, I mean, if we're worried about Mookie Betts at shortstop, can we find some defensive highlights of Andy Pages in center field? Like, it'd be the same argument. He's going to be better. He's going to get more reps at spring training, all that. So I don't know. I know that's not a popular take, but there you go, Matt. That's what I got.
Yeah, I think we've cleared the bases tonight on upsetting our viewers. So I mean, look, that's the beauty of us getting to do stuff like this and getting to interact with people, is their differing opinions, and we can talk them through and see, what people agree with and in this case, what they don't agree with. And still, I mean, look, I know we were focusing on Mookie and Gavin Lux right now, but the Juan Soto thing is a fascinating situation to me on just how many fans are against like a player, because he is certainly talented. Like I don't think anybody's taking that away from him. So just to see how polarizing his name has been interesting.
Yeah, and again, Stockton slaps real quick. I've played shortstop and second. Shortstop is by far more demanding at every level. It's comical you are debating long this issue. Range, throw, all of it. I'm not worried about Mookie Betts' arm hurting because the throw from shortstop is too long for him. Like, I don't think we're talking arm when it's physically demanding. Range, sure. I can understand that piece. Again, I just wonder if it's the type of thing that we say and we assume, but if there's actually any data to back it up. So let's get to some more of these super chats. We'll get back to a lot of this is Juan Soto related. Richard says Soto talked crap about the Dodgers in 2019 and 2022. He's Manny 2.0, Manny Machado he's referring to here. Too much Padres vibes. Don't want that classless punk in Dodger blue. I don't hold this view of Juan Soto. Like, I don't think the majority of the league holds this view of Juan Soto. I understand why someone would come to this conclusion, but I think it's just beauty's in the eye of the beholder, I suppose, or ugliness is in the eye of the beholder. And the way that you interpret Juan Soto, again, he's been well liked in every clubhouse he's been in. Like there's never been off the field problems. There's never been in the clubhouse problems. So, it is what it is. Let's see. 300 says, if Soto is willing to come here, and for the record, I don't think he does, but if he does, you take him and run. If it turns out to be a turd in the clubhouse, you trade him. Get him if you can. I mean, am I there's never been an off the field or on the field Juan Soto issue, right?
Yeah, not that I'm aware of, but this is like the clubhouse kind of perception or bad for the clubhouse narrative, like is a narrative that has formed, and it's not something that I can say that I've seen like I'd seen before this, or can point to and say, oh yeah, there was this one time or these
Yeah.
two times where this and this came out. Yeah, I don't know.
It's great. I mean, again, to your point, like somebody said, Jeff, just marry Soto already. I'm like, it is not controversial to like Juan Soto. Maybe in some pockets of the world it is, but most of
I
the
mean,
world loves
hey,
Juan Soto.
it wasn't all that long ago that there was a home run derby at Dodger Stadium and fans were chanting for him and Sarah trying to lure him to the team. So it's how
I
far
guess I
we've
had
come
competition in the
since
race
then.
for his ring, you know?
Yeah, perhaps.
Jonathan says, chat, okay, but how is Pujols on defense? Fair. I did see somebody say, could Juan Soto transition to playing first base by the time Freddie Freeman is retired? Which, you know, who knows? First base is one of those positions like, anybody could play that position, which I don't know. Maybe that's true. Laura asks, does signing Soto mean we're not signing Teo? I answered this question. I can't remember if you did. I think there's no way they could get both. Just from if we want to talk about the defensive issues, I don't know if you could really have two of those guys. I think you could probably game plan around and position around one poor defender. I'm not sure you could do that for two guys that grade out as poorly as they do.
I think the Dodgers would be the type of team that would be willing to try it, but I don't think Teoscar would come at like enough of a discount for them to be able to sign both. And I don't think Soto's market would like come down to 400 million all of a sudden. And so, we have, free money to spend because we thought it was going to be more. So I just think from a financial standpoint, more so than the Dodgers maybe not believing they could figure out how to align these guys in the outfield.
Stockton Slap has a handful of these. He says, no Soto, we can sign 5 quality players for him. This is one other piece of Dodgers roster building. Again, they just don't have roster spots. Like, I don't disagree with your general premise of like, they'll figure the 40-man roster out. But like, Brent Honeywell got DFA'd at one point this year because they didn't have room on the 40-man roster for him. Now it's Brent Honeywell, and he's a fan favorite now. But like, I understand that at one point, like, he was just Brent Honeywell. But like, if you're the Dodgers, there's not like a wide range of needs where you need to spread this money out. Would be the piece. Stockton Slaps also added no DH for Soto as he ages and gets even worse in the outfield. Again, totally understand it. He's that good offensively. Richard said we just spent 20 minutes on Soto. Thanks, Jeff. Richard, I appreciate you. You've been a long time follower, watcher, listener. So we just disagree on this. I think he's one of the greatest players of all time. So 20 minutes seems adequate. Stockton Slaps. Soto is a punk, wouldn't fit in this clubhouse. Again, I would ask, what evidence do we have of this? Stockton Slaps. Lux and Pages will be trade bait at the deadline. I do wonder what Pages' long-term future is. If Mookie moves and they sign Teoscar, there is an opening in a corner outfield spot in theory, but Dalton Rushing, by all accounts, might be headed for a corner outfield spot. So if they do sign Teoscar Hernández, Dalton Rushing could be fighting Andy Pages for playing time. And as far as prospect rankings go, Rushing is grades out much higher than Andy Pages did. So could you see would you be surprised if in the next 12 months, Andy Pages was shipped out?
I think so, because I could see a scenario where Teoscar moves to right field, Pages stays in center field, and Rushing is your left fielder.
Say that one more time. Pages in center field?
Depending on obviously what happens with Edman, like assuming Edman stays at shortstop, I could see a scenario where Pages is your center fielder. Teoscar in right field makes sense to me from the standpoint of, although we just got done saying, defensive concerns and all that with him and Juan Soto, but I think it makes sense from the standpoint of the Dodgers probably have a little bit more flexibility with who they could plug into left field, depending on what happens. Although the flip side to that is if you go and get a shortstop, then Tommy Edman goes to center field. I think Pages then is in right field and Teoscar is in left field.
Yeah. And Rushing is
Oklahoma City Comets.
No, come on. Rushing needs to be up.
I mean, he's not going to be up at the start of the season.
Let's not forget people were clamoring for this guy at the end of the last season.
Yeah, well, the people don't run the Dodgers front office.
It's true. That's true. ATX DaCosta says, who is your ideal shortstop then if you're not high on Adames? Mookie Betts, baby.
I'll go Corey Seager.
There we go. Hey, he was on my list. Did you like that? I included him on my great players that hit free agency early in their careers.
Yeah, the one that got away.
Would you trade for the Corey Seager contract right now if you could?
I mean, it's hard. Like, yes, depending on what the Dodgers would have to give up.
Because it's hard because that contract. So what did he sign for? 10 years, $325 million.
Yeah, that's nothing. That's a drop in the bucket. That's a bargain with the numbers we're talking these days.
No, I know. I'm just saying it's funny because he signed that going into his 28th season. Now he's going into his 31 season. So you're not getting the discount. Like on these contracts, you accept the fact that these guys are going to be worth $60-ish million to you in the first 3 to 5 years, and then $15 million in the back half, and it all evens out. So if you're paying him the $33 million a year for years 4 through 10, it's a little tougher.
I think the Dodgers would win at least one World Series during the the remainder of that contract, and at that point, it would make it worth it.
Yeah, look, I'm not anti it. I'm asking the question. I didn't love the contract at the time. Obviously, they won a World Series. If I didn't love it then, signing up for years 4 through 10 would be tough. To your point, what would the cost be? Would be an interesting question.
And then he becomes your third baseman too in a couple of years.
There you go. That's true. We could just have it all. Mookie could play shortstop and Corey Seager could just play third base.
Yeah, there we go. We brought it full circle.
Michael Davies, you left a super chat. If you meant to include a question in here, go ahead and throw that in the chat. If not, thank you. We appreciate you. We appreciate you watching, and a huge turnout. Sunday night, almost 3,300 people in here live with us on Facebook, on YouTube, on Twitter. Thank you. Some lively discussion. And hey, like we always say, it's okay to disagree. My feelings aren't hurt by people that think I'm an idiot. And I hope your feelings aren't hurt by me saying that I think Juan Soto is this or Mookie Betts should be that. I think that's what makes for good conversation, for good dialogue. And that's what makes these shows fun. If we all just came on here and agreed, that wouldn't be all that fun. So I appreciate everybody for being in here. Let's get to a couple questions here and then we'll go. Okay. And EC says I'm not an idiot. So I appreciate that as well. DJ Jesse, who would Ohtani want as a teammate? Remain with Teoscar or Juan Soto? Look, he loves Teoscar. I'm sure he would adjust, just like Freddie Freeman adjusted to life without Jason Hayward. I think we all would get over it. Okay, let's see. Yeah, sign Soto to play shortstop. Now we're talking. Now we're cooking with gas here, Matt. There we go. That's what I'm talking about.
That might even be enough to convince me. The Dodgers do have a need there. So if that's what Juan Soto can do, then hey, open up the checkbook.
Noisy Ninja says, question, but not really. Soto's obviously a talented hitter. My biggest reason it's a no is because Soto/Boris aren't going to defer money, which would undo Ohtani's wishes and handicap the Dodgers. I suppose you could paint it as this would actually accomplish Ohtani's wishes, because the only way they could ever sign Soto and pay him, whatever that number is, $45 million a year for 13 years is because of the Ohtani deferral, right?
Yeah, I see this the other way too. Is okay. They added a very, very, very good player. Since I'll try to straddle the fence here instead of not calling him one of the greatest of all times. Not saying he's terrible to the team, and I mean at that point you're still competing for a World Series year in and year out, which is what Ohtani which was the point of Ohtani structuring his contract that way.
Scooter Booter says, sorry, I know we talked about it, but I missed a portion. So he is not officially posted for teams to sign him. Correct. They have announced he will be posted. The deadline to post him is December 15th. December 2nd is the key date. If he gets posted before that, he will sign under 2024 budgets. If he gets posted after, he basically has the choice to try and sign immediately with 2024 numbers, which wouldn't make any sense, or 2025, where he would get more money, no matter the team. There's not a single team that would pay him less in 2025 than he would get in 2024. Although, again, I do want to point this out. We kind of blew past it. It is interesting on this front, Matt, because a lot of these teams have agreements already with international free agents for 2025. And on January 15th, a bunch of deals get announced. So when it says that the Dodgers have 5.1 million or, whatever, another team has 7.8, I think that's the biggest number. It'll be interesting to see how those teams navigate that with a guy like Sasaki, because Sasaki is better than all the rest of these guys and way closer to being a sure thing than any of the rest. But if you've got a $3 million agreement already with a top guy in the Dominican Republic or wherever else, Like, are you really going to just say, hey, actually, never mind. I know this agreement we've had for 2 years, waiting till you turned, 16 or whatever the number is. Like, I'm good. We're going to go after Sasaki. So it is interesting to note that just because a team technically has some of that money doesn't necessarily mean that.
Yeah, and the other part to that too is you can trade up to acquire, I think, up to 25% of your bonus
Yep.
pool in money. So you can technically add on if you're able to work that out with somebody.
Stockton Slap says, when do you think MLB gets a salary cap? Money is insane. Never. The labor agreements in this league are insane. So the owners and the players would never agree, whatever. They would never agree to it because the one side would never give up enough to the other to get it. So that's what we got. Jason asks, did Walker Buehler's World Series Game 5 save make you wonder about his ability to transition to a high leverage closer? Matt?
No, not right now. I mean, it's still, look, I get some of the concern with Buehler as a starter, but I think we're 2 years from, reliever talk becoming viable, if that.
Yeah. And look, his stuff just doesn't play up in a reliever role. It obviously looked great in that situation, but there's a reason that Kopech, Trinan, Phillips, Vesia, these guys have one thing in common. Well, not Vesia. I guess Vesia is the exception, but Vesia is a unicorn with his fastball. All these guys throw hard. Bonda throws 97, 98. Like Buehler just, I mean, maybe in a high leverage role, maybe once his arm gets healthy, maybe it's closer to 96, 97, but I just don't think he has the stuff. He has built his arsenal is a starter's arsenal, not a closer's, would be my take.
Yeah, and I was just going to say, Kopech wants to be a starter again, so maybe that's the starting pitcher on Dave's wish list that we were discussing earlier. We forgot Kopech, wanting to get back into the rotation. So our apologies there. We should have put a little bit more attention to detail with that one.
All right, one more question. Then I have a food question for you that I meant to ask Anthony. We ran out of time. Jake says, who do you think is the most likely trade or free agent target for the Dodgers that did not play for the 2024 team? So a guy that they would either have to go trade for. Garrett Crochet is a name who's been mentioned. I mentioned Bo Bichette as a possible guy. And then, of course, Corbin Burns, Tanner Scott. These are all free agent options. So if you had to pick a guy who would be new to the Dodgers in 2025, who would you choose?
Roki Sasaki.
There you go. That's a good. How about other than Roki Sasaki? You seem in on Tanner Scott.
No, I'm not. I just I just assume, like, just based on let me see if I can word this right. I need the nerd guys to tell me, based on the floor the Dodgers have in their bullpen.
Yeah.
For Dave Roberts to say high leverage, for that to be an external piece, it needs to be somebody like Tanner Scott, right?
Yeah.
Like, at least in theory.
Right. No, I think it's a fair point. You're not going out and getting he's referring to a guy that's going to slot in the Blake Trine and Evan Phillips group more so than the,
Yeah. So it's not, I'm not, I mean, I wouldn't, if he comes on, kind of team friendly deal, but I'm assuming it's going to be something crazy. So I wouldn't do that. So not Roki. I'll say Crochet. I could see that happening.
I'd have to dig in. Just he doesn't check the boxes to me. I'm sure the stuff is great, but it's like all of your concerns about Tyler Glasnow and then just dump gasoline on those concerns. So
I guess that would make sense why Blake and Scott are pushing Garrett Crochet, because they were the driving force behind Tyler Glasnow. And if either one of them are still in here, I know we'll get some comments about it. But
there you go.
I just could see it from the standpoint of he's under team control. The White Sox need to sell at some point. They can't keep kicking the can down the road. Like, eventually you're cutting into your return. If they had traded Crochet at the deadline, I know that there were some concerns about his and there's Blake saying Crochet is cheap, so you can sign Soto. There were some concerns about his innings limit and all that. But if you drag him into the trade deadline this year, like, that's just fewer months that a team potentially has him under control. And so I feel like it makes sense just to trade him, end that distraction once and for all for the White Sox.
I'll just complete the trifecta. Do you want me to say the next thing that's just going to make people mad?
I mean, you might as well. We've already touched all the bases tonight.
Blake Snell is a guy that the Dodgers have pursued multiple times. And so clearly they like him. He checks a lot of the boxes they're after. He's not popular. I'm not saying I would be fired up about it, but there you go. It's Soto, Blake Snell, and Mookie to shortstop. There you go. There's the Jeff trifecta for tonight. I did see we had Sockton Slap said, at this pace, we're 4 to 5 years away from $100 million a year player, which means Juan Soto is going to be great value. So that's all I got to say, So, all right. Okay. We're at the hour 25 mark, 3,300 people. Thank you. I have a food question for you, Matt. And it's less of like a food question, more of an etiquette. I can't remember. Are you a Chipotle Qdoba guy?
Chipotle.
Okay. So the last week, and sorry, again, we do some food stuff at the end just to mix it up. I go in, I ordered a to-go order, and I go to pick up my burrito. And this thing was more square than it was rectangle, to the point that like the wrapping didn't even fit around it. And you could tell that the tortilla basically wasn't even closed on this burrito. So I asked them if they could rewrap the burrito for me, because I'm looking at this thing. This would not be edible as a burrito, which is what I ordered. And this was an event where I was like not going to be sitting somewhere where I could just take. Did I film? No. What? Is that a thing?
Yeah. So I don't know if this is why Blake is asking, but I have seen people, and I don't agree with it, but recording as they're ordering at Chipotle to like try to pressure them into giving you more food and or make sure that they do it right. I don't know, Blake, you can add clarification.
That's insane behavior.
From what your Costco guys are doing these days at Chipotle.
Yeah. Blake and the Rizzler filming people at Chipotle. But so then they were like, well, we can't rewrap it because like you've already taken the food. So I didn't ask for this. They were like, we'll just make you a new one. I'm like, I don't need a new one. They're like, don't worry about it. And I walked away. Am I crazy for handling that situation? Like, would you have just accepted that was your burrito and walked away? Or would you have, again, I wasn't asking for a free one. I was originally saying like, could you just dump what's in here into a new tortilla and just actually make it so that the tortilla closes? But apparently that wasn't an option.
What was wrong with the first?
Like it wasn't edible. It was going to fall apart the second that it would take it out of the wrapper, even in the slightest. The whole thing was coming aside.
I mean, yeah, I probably would have asked for like I would have either said like, can you give me another tortilla and like I'll do it myself, maybe even double wrap it.
Yeah, I thought about that afterwards. I should have just asked for another burrito or another tortilla and just said I'll do it. But again, they had offered to make me a new one, and I was like not expecting this interaction to be something that I was dealing with in the moment, and so. I didn't walk away from a free burrito. If anything, I actually got the double burrito because then they were like, well, we can't take that one back. So we'll make you a new one. Keep that one. The other thing was I could have just gotten a bowl and dumped it into a bowl. But again, this has to be mentioned. I was like, this was a to-go meal. So it wasn't something that I could just sit and eat out of a bowl in the space that where I was headed to. So anyways.
No, I think you're fine. And I do agree with Blake. I think, a burrito bowl is better than their burrito. I used to be pro burritos back in the day, and then I don't know, several years ago I switched over to bowls and haven't looked back.
Somebody said a bowl with a tortilla on the side. That's normally my go-to move, because then I make a normal sized burrito and you got a little bit of leftover for either later on or the next day. I become a chips guy though. Chips in a bowl and just dipping. So, but okay. I'm glad to hear that I didn't screw this up royally. So that's good to know.
It's a good thing that I got this question, because Anthony already has a pretty strong level of hate for Chipotle, if I'm remembering correctly. So he would have just gone on to probably slander them. So it's a good thing that you guys ran out of time.
Yeah. But speaking of hot takes, I prefer, like, I would say it's like, 51-49, but I'd take Qdoba over Chipotle. That's my hot take.
That is a hot take. There isn't
free
a Qdoba,
guacamole, free queso. They don't charge you extra for any of that stuff.
I mean, there's probably a reason for that.
That probably is, but I'm not asking questions. So there you go. Blake. Oh my gosh. IHOP. Don't even get me started. All right. Laura got a question for us. Still on a World Series high. Aren't we all, Laura? Aren't we all? Chances we sign Sasaki 1 to 10, Matt.
7.
I'll go 8.5. I think everybody would be surprised at the very least, if not shocked, if he signs somewhere else. But again, Ohtani did this once, so, don't get your hopes up. There we go. Lots of 8s, 9s, 7s, 9.99 BC says 11 NS. So there you go. We got some people that are very, very confident. So, all right, everybody, we appreciate you joining us here on a Sunday night. I mentioned this on social media. This is going to be the new deal. Sunday nights, 8:30 p.m. We are going to be here every single week. It'll be myself, and I think sort of a rotating cast on Sunday nights. Matt will be here sometimes. I think Blake might filter in, Scott might filter in, Daniel might filter in, just kind of rotating through. Tuesday nights, Thursday nights, those are the 3 live nights we've got starting basically now. And then obviously, if some news breaks, we'll have live shows like we always do. So 3 for sure, potentially more. So we appreciate everybody for joining us. And as always, tons of new content coming in the mornings. We've got an interview that I'm excited about, a player, a member of the Dodgers who will be on our channel next week. So stay tuned for that. Matt mentioned we've got an interview up that's coming up, with Alex Friedman, who does PR and announcing for Oklahoma City, talking through their rebranding. So some cool stuff coming, as well as some short videos that we'll post throughout the week as well. So Matt, anything on the Dodger Blue side, dodgerblue.com to point people to?
No, I mean, just the website. We're still publishing plenty of daily content each day. I did see somebody saying Jason is saying hopefully Soto signs soon. Scott Boras has suggested that that's not going to be the case, which, hey, for our sake, if we could keep talking Juan Soto and maybe see if Jeff, Blake, and Scott can convince you guys, then it makes for great theater. And I'll sit back and just be a moderator. I'll like an air traffic controller, kind of direct everything and let the chat and Scott, Blake, and Jeff sort of try to convince each other as to why their stance is the right one.
Totally. And I see some people saying Happy Veterans Day. Absolutely. I hope everybody gets to enjoy Veterans Day, and a special shout out to anybody who has served, is currently serving, or has family members currently serving. I don't take for granted what folks like that have given up for our country, and that goes to spouses, children, parents, all of the above. And so thank you to all of you folks who have served, and I hope all those people have a great Veterans Day tomorrow and get to enjoy a little bit of time as well. So enjoy the rest of your night. Again, if you're a podcast person, subscribe, Apple, Spotify, Google, DodgerHeads Podcast. If you're new to YouTube, right here, subscribe, ring the notification bell on Dodger Blue 1958. That is Matt. I am Jeff. Enjoy the rest of your night. Go Dodgers. And of course, still champs.